I'm Lori with To the Trade, and I have Niall here. Hi, Niall.
Hi.
We match again, Niall.
I know
Second time in a
this
row.
is crazy, right? Like
We didn't
we're on
call
some
each
sort of
other, I
wavelength. I
promise,
know this
but
is so
we're
funny.
just we're coordinating. And we have the
Exactly.
lovely Laura Thornton with us today. Super excited to talk to you, Laura.
I'm so thrilled to be here. I feel like you guys don't know that we're best friends, but I listen to you all the time. And so I feel like I've just
Oh,
joined
Yay.
wow.
like a friend phone call.
Well, that's kind of what we're going for. We are best
Yeah,
friends.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
So let's talk about you. I want to get to the very beginning. Tell me how you got into interior design and why. I mean, that's always the topic right now because everyone's like, why did I get into design?
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
I came by it honestly. My dad was a luxury home builder.
Ooh,
Construction was part of the way I grew up. When I was 14 years old, I'd lived in 14 houses because every year my dad would buy a fixer upper before flipping was a thing or a TV show. That's what he was doing on the weekends, and during the week he was building other people's homes. So by the time I was in grade 9, we had lived in basically a new house every year. So it was something where I was constantly living in a construction zone and understood the phases very young, and still love the smell of sawdust and fresh paint. That is to me like sense of home. To some people it's like cookies
Yes.
and vanilla, but to me it's paint and sawdust. My sister always says we're like weird, but that is what smelled like home. And so I came by that very honestly. And to be fair, my dad did not want any of his daughters going into construction. And so I went to university to be a lawyer first and got there and realized this is not for me. So after 2 years, I was like, this is not the right brain. So I thought I'd look into other options. And, that's how old I am. It was pre web. So we had to actually make phone calls and call schools and get this big catalog to come and figure out what courses I could take that, attracted your mind. And so I found interior design and I applied and got in and had to go home and tell mom and dad that I was dropping out of university to go to college here in Canada because it's two different things here to do design. And my dad lost his mind. He really liked the idea of having the lawyer. He did not like the idea of the construction. As an immigrant to Canada, with that was his only option, he didn't understand why I'd want to do that. But when you grow up with it and that's all you know, it became very easy. Long story short, years later, he apologized for being upset about it and realizing that if, I'm not going to complain. We had a pretty lovely upbringing. I never wanted for anything. And so now that afforded me and my family this lifestyle that I built with my design business. So I came by it honestly. It was something that was part of my world forever and always. And I'm the fourth generation of contractor in my family. So it is
I
interesting
love
in that
that
regard.
though.
Nice.
First
I think
woman,
that's
the first woman.
actually I love that.
Nice.
That's honestly very, I feel like we've interviewed a lot of people who are multi-generation in the business. So I think that's a very common story. And we actually have quite a few designers I've talked to that used to be or were on the path of attorneys, believe it or not. I think that because of the science and art, meets art situation and design, it's almost like it does attract an analytical, partly that analytical mind that would be drawn to those kinds of jobs, where you need that brain to think about that. So you're still using it, but you've shifted it a little bit because you wanted the creativity side to be included. And I think that's fantastic. Let's talk about your business. So when did you start your business?
It started in the commercial world first, right out of school. And I was there for a few years before I had my first son. And that was what I knew. And I thought I wanted to be in that avenue. And then right before I got pregnant the first time, I started working on weekends. I think they call that a side hustle now. It is something where, I was doing corporate work and I would have a VP or a president come to me and say, can you come to my house? We need help with paint colors or furniture. Can you help? Again, at the time it was, can you come help my wife? And so I was doing that on weekends. And then I was slowly seeing that this was far more interesting for me because it was more of a challenge where for me, the commercial work was a lot of rinse and repeat. And this was something where people actually were attached to it and it made a difference in their lives. And they were so happy when we were able to create their home into what they had envisioned. And so I started to get drawn to that world. And after I had my first son, I did go back for a few months and I realized this is not for me. The flexibility wasn't there. And I started my own business. So it's been over 25 years. And
I
I know it doesn't feel like it. It feels like a blip in time. But when you have a 24 going on 25-year-old, you're reminded all the time that This is
Right.
how long you've been in business. Now, it wasn't what it is now. It started off very part-time, when naps were happening or play school was happening, then and then eventually as my sons got older, I started doing it more full-time. And now it's a full-time business.
Now, that long in the industry, you've seen some ups and downs, I'm assuming. What has been the biggest challenge that you've had to survive this long in the interior design business?
Funny enough, I think it's the last couple of years. And I think it's
Really?
the real high and down from COVID. Like we were riding like on a frequency that was so not normal, but yet as a business owner, and as you can appreciate, you ride those waves because at some point it's got to come down. So I found the biggest change has been in the last year. And that is not only just COVID, there's been some political issues between tariff talks and
Yeah,
things like that, where people are just afraid. They're coming
of
back.
course.
People are coming back, but I think it's just that up and down, that little roller coaster ride of unknown. And I think my age might play in a little bit. I know I've referenced that a few times and I'm not feeling like I'm that old. I was making jokes before, but I feel like as you get older and you start reaching a part where you're not just thinking about work, you are thinking about retirement down the road. How many more years do you want to run at a frequency that is so high, like we did in COVID, that you realize that's exhausting? And so I recognized that I don't want to run the 80-hour week. I knew where I wanted to be. And I feel like I think the last 12 to 15 months has been the most unknown charted territory in my business. Otherwise, it had always been literally the same direction. It had always been going up. It had been building, it had been building. And I just found the last 12 to 15 months has been the most, I don't want to say turbulent, but just the most unknown time.
Right, right. I think a lot of people are feeling that. I was on a podcast, someone else's podcast, a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about tariffs, and we just had a good, healthy like conversation about what really people are feeling. And in the DMs that I'm getting from interior design community is that there are a lot of projects on hold right now because people are nervous, and when the clients are nervous because you know, their their 401k just lost 50% of its value. I mean, it's just that it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you've lost a significant portion, it doesn't make you feel like spending money. You know what I mean? I think that's the key. And so it's always that like I've got to pause. I've got to figure out what's going to happen. I don't know where this is going, and that time of uncertainty is scary for all of us. I think I think we're all a little bit on edge and not knowing where it's going to go. And so, but I do want to say, having witnessed a lot of designers coming out of the housing market crash and having come out of various 2016 you know issues, and before that, even like the blogging era of the 2008 recessions. So we've seen designers go through really difficult times and get really creative anyway. It's a good time to, refine your systems. Is that something that you're thinking, or cutting back and being lean, mean, those kinds of things? How do you handle a challenge where you feel unknown?
Oh, yes, I'm always very conscious and aware of my expenses. It's something that I also teach in the Profit Academy because it's something that you should be on all the time, regardless of the ebb and flow of a year. It should be something that you're always looking at. Are you using all the seats that you pay for every time a bill comes
Right.
in? Are you ignoring it? Or, have you touched that software in the last 6 months? Maybe you take a break from it. Those things I'm always checking on. But I don't want to, I'm not trying to scare anyone when I say it's unknown. And to your point, like I've had a
No.
couple of projects get put on hold, and then they made room for two projects that came in from past clients who are not affected by the things that are happening, you know, in the world right now. Like they are in businesses where they're not going to feel the pinch that we're all going to feel, or our clients might feel. And they aren't thinking twice about coming in and having 4 bathrooms redone, which is
Right.
great.
Right. Right.
So, like I don't want to frighten anyone who's listening. Of course, there's always going to be the people that are always willing to spend and are not affected by it. And so I've realized with those types of clients that I have to now change our marketing to maybe gear towards that. Like it doesn't have to be like if it's 4 bathrooms, I will take a 4-bathroom project, no problem. It doesn't need to be a whole house.
Right.
Things
Right.
like that will definitely be worth our efforts and our time, and I can tweak my marketing to appeal to someone in that market.
I love that you're that flexible. I mean, it's, and that you do review it on a monthly basis, because I think that that's something
Yeah.
that a lot of designers maybe forget, because it's like we have our tech stacks. I don't know how many subscriptions people have out there, but if you're like me, sometimes you just forget what you have. My husband's constantly like, you signed up for this app, it's renewing. Do you still want it? I'm like, what? I haven't used that app in like 2 years. Like,
And then
and things
surprise,
like
it's on
that.
your visa.
Yeah.
Well, I even had to review like our
Growing up.
Apple subscriptions because we had so many
Oh
Apple
my
charges. And
God.
I was like, what is
Oh,
all these Apple things? So I had to go and like
yeah.
it's storage, but it's just, even if you aren't used to doing it, I always set a January before, like when I'm off, our studio closes for 2 weeks over Christmas to New Year. And that is one of the things that I'm always done for over 20 years is I review everything. I pull out all of my bank statements. I go through everything. And even though it's all done by an accountant and it's easy to see a line item, they don't always get it right either. That you kind of want to see, why are my delivery costs so high? What has been lumped in there? So I just kind of do like the high level things, highlight what's running a bit high, or anything that we outsource, what's running high, and I reassess. Like this year, I'm reassessing all our insurance. It's just gotten so outrageous that I need
Oh
to do
yeah.
the due diligence to see, is this still aligned, or have I just gotten too good at saying, yep, it's off my plate, done for the year, pay that, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
Those things add up when you're paying
Yeah.
liability insurance and you're paying studio insurance and you're paying car insurance and you're paying, like, it is a big ticket item at the end of the year on
Right.
your profit and loss account. And so these are the things that we don't think about because they're a necessity, but we can still shop them. I also shop my
Yeah.
cell phone. Like we pay an absorbent amount of cell phone bills in Toronto, but I shop those things every year and try and get those expenditures lower so that I'm always
Right.
having a higher revenue.
Right. Yeah, right. The more going out is less coming in. So, so taking those little, what seems like little expenses just because you feel like it's taken care of and you don't have the mental energy to deal with it, it's worth it to sometimes look at what it
Absolutely.
is that it is going out the door, before it actually becomes, a problem, and it starts affecting like whether or not you can pay your team or whatever that might be. Now you're teaching too, so tell us a little bit about the Profit Academy and how that works.
Well, the Profit Academy came out of the podcast, and it was the most common DM, or like if I was saying, tell me what you want me to talk about. And it was always about how to be more profitable, or how do I bill for this, or how do I bill? Like they were asking me how I'm billing. And, as I've done this for a couple of decades, you forget the steps that I took to learn all of this. And it was self-taught. It was trying to find the books. It was trying to find any nugget of information. And thankfully now we're at a time where, there are people like yourselves doing podcasts and helping other designers, and there's more information. It just didn't exist. So I had to create the process for myself. And then I had to learn how to charge. And a lot of that was done through trial and error, and how to get multiple revenue streams into my business, not just design time, not just design. And so now I've taken all of these questions and all this information, and I created the Profit Academy for interior designers, because there's only, you get asked, can you go for coffee? Can you help me with, there's only so many coffees a girl can have in a day before like you start twitching. So it definitely was a better way to get that information out to the world. And so it's over 10 hours of talking. There is homework. There is deep dives into your business. Exactly what we just talked about. Do you know your expenses? How much money do you have to make every month to cover your expenses every month? Or what does it
Yeah.
cost to
Yeah.
run your business in a year? And shockingly, most designers I talk to don't know the number.
Right. Right.
Like I know
We're
exactly.
just
Yeah.
talking about this situation in our Facebook group today. I had a designer who talked about basically like there's just so many couches out there, and it's easy to get, swindled, really. I
Yeah.
feel like we did, because it got so busy during 2020, that we as an industry ended up on some sort of like list for I saw coaches I've never seen at all in the industry, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying all of them are bad, because some of them are coming in with specific information that could be very useful to the interior design industry. You don't have to be in the industry to teach designers something they might not know. But I do think that it felt a little predatory. You know what I mean? It felt like overnight there were like, I'd be on Facebook scrolling and I'd find 8 new coaches I'd never seen before. And I'm like, it's just like
Right.
overnight thing. And so I've tried to tell designers, and if you're listening, this is something maybe you should mark down, is like, if you are looking for someone, I love what you're doing because the finance side of it is so difficult, and being profitable is so difficult. And I think partially because of how little transparency there is, and there has to be because it's so custom, right? I mean, every project is going to be priced differently because there's different finishes and different products and different timelines for those kinds of things, depending on this vendor versus that vendor. And all of those things are come into play. But I think that the tools of examining your profits are not that different. So I think that's a really valuable thing to get a coach to help you do. But I always think like there are 3 coaches I think are that you should be measuring. You should have a coach that's walked the walk and done it. They're a designer. They understand the industry. They can do it just like you have. There's someone coming out from the industry that has some specific knowledge, and they like might be an accountant, or they might be an attorney, or they might be, somebody who's going to give you professional advice that you might need, maybe a business strategist, things like that. And then I think the third in this industry that are still valuable, but you need to recognize that that's what you need, is that like therapist/coach that is like building your confidence and making you
Yep.
feel like you can take this on. And at different points in your career, you might need each one of them, but you should always be measuring them on trackable data as much as you possibly can, because so often I think you get a review from a friend, or we're in this industry where it's like 80% women. People don't like to talk bad about anybody else. So even you'll find like, even if they don't think that coach is great, they're going to say, oh, she's fantastic, because we don't like saying anything mean about anybody else. So try to find some trackable information about what this coach is going, and the ROI really is. Like, did it actually affect anybody's numbers? Like if they're helping you teach you about social media, what were the numbers of their clients? What were they in the beginning and what are they now? Where did that go for that person? How many videos went viral? Can you look at that? I mean, there's a lot of public information that you might be able to find, or asking those people specific numbers. What did your revenue grow, and how did you maintain profitability, and what steps did you take? Like, instead of, did you like her?
Yes.
Because liking her or him
Different.
versus, like, did you get actionable advice that helped your business, are 2 different things.
And that I love that you're saying that, because that is the goal. And I am still running a design business, and I'm not going to give that up. That is what I do for a living. This was just it started as something to give back to the community, and it's spun into something else. But it is something where I think you still have to be in the industry.
Somebody who's done it, and still it is really difficult if you haven't, because this business changes often.
Oh my gosh, look how much it's changed in the last year with AI. Like, it's changing so rapidly that you can't be out of this business for a year or 2 and still be trying to teach something about this business, because this is going to be a pinnacle few years of how rapid this business is going to change. And I think it will be a lot of it for the better. Just like AutoCAD changed us back when AutoCAD came out. Imagine how many people were worried about losing their draftman's job, right? Like I was in school when that came out, so I didn't think about it. But this at first was quite scary. But we're at a point where this is going to change efficiency in a manner that we don't even know yet. But if you're not in the world and you're not practicing, I don't know, to your point, I don't know how you can teach it, because it will rapidly be changing in a way that we're probably not prepared for.
I know.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I just talked to someone on the podcast recently who was like, I think this is, believe it or not, when there are new tools to our advantage to be able to do, no one's going to replace a designer, because the designer brings so much creative thought to the project and the relationships with everyone of those product lines. But I think that using the tools and jumping in, it is a very exciting time for designers, that there could be efficiencies to our process that are parts of the job we don't like. You know what I mean? No designer, there are very few, I shouldn't say no. I should say there are very few designers that love spending a ton of time rendering, but if it can be made easier through AI, wonderful. It's another tool at your disposal that you can get some of the things you don't enjoy doing done faster, and so that you can do some of the things you can do. The creative thought can't be replaced,
And you're going to save some money on some software. So you're going to take some of those
Sure.
monthly fees off, right? Hopefully. But
Yay.
yeah, yeah, but I agree with you. I
Absolutely.
think it's pretty exciting. And I think if you're not working in it, I don't know how you could keep up. So
Yeah,
to your
yeah.
point, I fully agree. I think it's really, and again, I've said it a million, I'm unapologetically in business to make money. As much as it's fun to make people's homes beautiful, I do this and work this hard to afford a living for myself. And so it took
Yeah.
me years to figure it out. And so if I can save another designer a decade and help them get profitable far faster and have it figured out far faster from, my trial and error, I am happy to share that information so that they can. And of course, it's
Absolutely.
like anything, you take out of it what you want and tweak it to work for you. But if I had had this template 20 years ago, I don't even want to think about where I could have been that much quicker.
Right. Right. It's that saving time and money situation.
Yeah.
That's really where this kind of thing benefits you. I'm sure, because I know designers so well, what some of the questions that people come on to your program are asking you. And I'm just curious what your take is on this. Like, what happened? Do you have people coming to you about being shopped? And how you teach them
All
how
the
to handle
time.
that process? Okay,
All the time.
I would guess.
Yeah. It's one of the most commonly asked questions. How do I not get
Right.
comp shopped, especially in the world of Google Lens, right? You just put the picture in and
Right.
boom,
Oh my God.
I can shop it a
Right.
million times over.
Yeah.
So, there's multiple ways. One, you can not use names. You cannot use, you can not use the name of whatever that light fixture is that's very easily to type in and up comes visual comfort. But regardless of that, you can get into all custom furniture. You're going to High Point. They don't need to know who you're using to manufacture, as long as your client trusts you. They can trust in you in the process and all of those things. I mean, having the ability to get into showrooms that are not open to the public is also a real benefit. Again, I know this really depends on where people geographically live. And if you're close to a city center, this might be easier than some other people who are rural. And then, the other thing is you have to have the right client who doesn't want to shop you and trusts you and understands that minuscule amount of money you're making at a retail level is your expertise, and that they didn't have to go and look for that piece, that you put it all together and let you take that very minimal amount of revenue and profit from a retail piece. I think the trick really is to stay away from retail.
Right.
That is going to be.
It's also like partially communication. You can just have this conversation that there's some products that are going to be, you might, if they spent 9 hours on the internet, they could find it $100 cheaper, but that doesn't mean, but they're not coming to you when they are also saving $100.
My job is not to find you the cheapest product. I always say that's not my job. My job is not to find you that product the cheapest. If I have built up rapport and relationships with my vendors, there is a benefit there. So you might, to your point, you might find it $100 cheaper after your 12 hours of searching on internet. And if you really want it for that $100 cheaper, then I always say you can go buy it. I will not track it. If there's a problem, we're not returning it. We're not and again, it's being forthcoming. It's saying that we don't share. I don't share any of our discounts, and it's in our contract. Our clients know it. It is not, we don't use a lot of retail. We shop very much wholesale and custom. And that's always our goal. But of course, there's always some pieces that we want that might be RH or, whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
but we don't share our discounts. And so that's something that we're just very forthcoming on. But my job is not to find you that piece at the cheapest price point. My job is to get it there and have it look great and be in perfect working order. And if there was a problem, guess what? You never knew that there was a problem, and I still got it there on time and it's in good shape. And if it has to be returned, that 20% markup, which is maybe $107 on some pieces, is now lost because I have to track it. I need to make sure that it got there. If there's, it got to be returned. So those profits, which are meant to be for the designer, should stay with the designer. That has always been my opinion. I've never shared. I've been asked a million times. Somebody did us a solid disservice decades ago by sharing interior design discounts where they thought that was the plus to use us and our services. And it is, I find it far less now. I'm not being asked as much. It's not something that's happening. But when I first started, it was something that was always asked and I always felt pressured to do. And I did at the beginning until I realized this is not a profitable business model. I can't keep
Right.
functioning here. So now we don't share them, and it's in our contract. Our clients are aware, and we don't get
Yeah.
asked anymore.
Honestly, I mean, having that blunt conversation too with your clients, like if you really did search the internet and find them the cheapest price for the products, the hourly fee would far outweigh the
Oh my
discount or
God.
saving that they would get. So it doesn't, and you'd be buying from unreliable sources. So it doesn't make any sense on their behalf either. And if they spend the time to do it, I just feel like they're doing that in effort to erode your own profit and your own profitability as a business. So it's sometimes just having that conversation. This is how I make a living. I mean, if you're in business, you have, everybody has. If I'm going to buy a sandwich and I'm not questioning what they're spending on the meat or the cheese or the bread,
Right.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm not bringing in my own so that they can make it with my ingredients. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy to me that clients can't understand a basic conversation at the beginning about, and I get it. It stinks to pay $100 more than you probably could find online, but over the scheme of things, you're not really saving yourself any
No.
money,
Well, even
which has
just
been
I've had
proven time again by
totally.
100 million designers who talk to me, or they're like, yes, the client did do it on their own and they got it in and it was broken and they asked me to deal with it and I said no and they got upset.
So I've also had it where I've had to explain to them that we we're very conscious about trying to buy from similar vendors and relationships that we've built up so that it services both our client and us. But what that also does is it brings down the shipping costs. So you're going to now take this one element away and you're going to pay, because some of it, like for instance, here in Toronto, Restoration Hardware is $360 to deliver. So you saved $100, but now you're going to pay separately $360 on your own to have that delivered. Let's just, for example. So they're not actually saving anything. So numerous times,
Right.
if it did come up, we were very quick to say, but you're going to now pay another shipping cost. And we're very conscious about ordering things from this one to save on shipping. And now you're not actually saving anything. It's going to cost you more. They just don't know what they don't know. They don't know that
Right.
the efforts we made behind the scenes to help us. I mean, yes, did it service us? Absolutely. To have one truck show up and deliver instead of multiple trucks on move-in day, that we were able to save on shipping. Like these things they don't know because they don't have to. But once we draw it to their
Right.
attention, they're very quick to say, oh, okay, understood. I think they just want to know that we're not just spending their money frivolously without
Right.
thought. And
And
we're
of
just
course
being
not.
conscious with
I
their hard-earned money. Yeah.
I don't think I think that's the biggest myth in this industry is that I would say designers care more about being good facilitators of a budget than anyone else on the project. I mean, I'm not saying that just because I love
I agree.
designers so much, but I mean, I really believe they are carefully watching that budget to try to wring as much beauty out of it as they possibly can, because that reflects on them, like how beautiful the project is. So they're definitely trying to get as much bang for your buck. It behooves them to do that. Like
Yeah.
if you give them $100,000, they're trying to make it look like $200,000 as much as they possibly can, because they want it published. They want other people. They want to attract that higher end client. There isn't anybody else on the project that has that kind of stake in the
Agree.
game to, that weighs. I mean, that's why you see out of everybody else on the project, the tile person, the wallpaper guy, the painter, the contractor, who's paying for the pictures?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who's buying the pictures?
Couldn't
And
agree
it's
more.
because the
Yeah.
designer has the most stake in that's the only way to translate what they did. So,
Yes.
I mean, I think that I wish if there was something I could just make sure every client knows, I would try to push that onto the narrative, because I think that the misconception is that designers always want to spend more money when they actually just they want to get as much as they possibly can for your
That's right.
budget. So,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to your point, I have done
Yeah.
it where I have been tried to, nickel and dime is not the right term, but you know what I mean? Like trying really hard. And then I'm
Right.
like, you know what? We got to do the pillow that they said no to because it didn't have because it's going to make it. Let's just do it. And we eat it.
I've
Because
told people this too. People do not believe me outside of this industry. I'm like,
I've
there
eaten
isn't
it.
anybody on that project that's going to buy something for the client
That's right.
other than the
Yeah.
designer.
I know. And I've done it.
Listen.
Artwork too. I'm like, we're just going to do it because A, it looks
We're
great.
just gonna
B,
do it.
we're going to make
Yeah.
it their gift, even though it does good
Right.
things for us and for the pictures and it finishes the room. But we knew they wanted it. It just wasn't in budget. And now we're like selfishly, like, I have to So we've done it. That's something we've done
Yep.
here where I know I'm
Yeah,
eating it.
but
I
did
know they
anyone else
didn't
in
pay
the
for it.
project buy a gift for the
No,
client? Did
they're
anyone?
in, they're out. No, they're gone.
They're
They didn't
in,
even
they're
clean up
out.
after themselves. I'm picking up things off the floor.
Exactly. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your focus is money, which I love. I love money and I love data and I love all of those things. Beyond the tech stack, beyond like getting shopped, what is your like go-to? What's the thing that you think every client, every designer out there should be doing to improve their profitability?
So two things. One, you have to get really super comfortable with numbers. You really, really, really have to sit down and you need to be okay with it's scary to not know what you're going to be looking at. But once you get comfortable with the terms and once you get familiar with a profit and loss, just start simple because it is nerve wracking. It's that icky feeling. I don't want to know how much you need to know how much you're profiting percentage wise on every product, on every project. And not just at the beginning when it all looks lovely and dandy and you're signing off contracts. Every time there's a change and every time something costs you money, like we did an install last week, 2 weeks ago, and we got there and the plug was too far for the lamp. I had to send someone out to go buy an extension cord. So we need to go back after and add that into our statements to know that that actually cost us another $8. And at the end of all those little like nuances, let's say, we need to know what percentage we're running that project at. And there needs to be everyone's business will be different and what that looks like and how much it costs for you to run your business. You know, my business to run out of a studio with a team is going to be different than a solopreneur out of their home. So, you know, you might need to run, you can be running at a 40 to 50% profit margin at a studio, but you could be running at 30 to 20 to 30% at home and having a very lovely living. So you need to know your numbers. You need to know where you need to run your business, and you need to know the difference between profit margin and gross profit. You need to know the difference. There's just simple things that you don't realize are different, but it makes a big difference at the end of the year on your bottom line. I didn't know for the first 10 to 12 years of business that there was a difference between gross profit versus gross margin. If you
Right.
think you're putting 20% onto a $100 item and you're making $20, that's very different than if you would type it in properly and you're making $25 on top of. It's a big difference when you're multiplying those zeros at the end of the year on $100,000 versus $100. So small things, but shockingly, I ran a business for a long time without an accountant. I was doing all those things and didn't know the difference. So these are things that I feel are very important to learn and get comfortable with the terms, and then they'll become rote. You won't think anything of it. So it allows you before you present to a client and you're working your numbers, you can tweak the numbers and tweak the project to fit the budget that you need it to be at to be running profitably. A lot of us just pick pretty things, present it and think, great, I'm making $5,000. But are you really making $5,000? Or are you accounting for your time? Are you accounting for gas? How many site visits are you going to have to do? Are you going to check the furniture at a custom furniture house first? Are you ordering fabric? How much is the fabric to ship? So these small things add up and cut into your budget, and you need to be allotting for it. A lot of designers I speak to aren't charging for a consultation, and that's fine if you're comfortable with that. But then should it maybe be a Zoom call as opposed to a site where you've now gotten in your car, you've driven 30 minutes away, you've put wear and tear on your vehicle, you have put gas in your vehicle, and then you get there and maybe the client isn't there because there was no skin in the game.
Yeah.
So they forgot about you
Right.
because you weren't charging anything. And now you got to drive back. So small things, but all of this adds up. It's your time, it's your money, it's your cell phone every month. So these are just real surfacey things. There's a lot more. I could literally talk your ear off for 10 hours, but these are just small things that make such a big difference. Or even when you're quoting a job, have you included how many site visits you're going to do? A lot of people do flat rate. You still need to be tracking your hours. These are small
Yes.
things that make such a big difference. How you quantify your efficiency. How can you tell if you've gotten better at your job, or are you quicker? Or, you know, you have to go back and do your numbers. You have to keep the data and you have to use those. Those will be great tools moving forward in your business to be able to find averages of projects. If a client says to you, well, how much is your average kitchen? Yes, there's a lot of different moving parts. But if you know how many hours it's been taking you over your last 5 to 10 kitchens, it's a much quicker math. And if it allows you to know if it's going to fit into your timeline, if it's the right project fit for you. I think there is so much you get out of knowing your numbers and your data that supersede even just your hours. And this is where you can start to build a business in a very different way. And you can also start seeing different revenue streams come into your business, not just design hours. If you're selling product, that was a game changer for my business. Like, you tap out with design time. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many days in the week. There's only so many weeks in the year. But as soon as you're knowing your numbers and it allows you to bring revenues in a different way, your business can take off in a very different manner with very different bottom lines. And I
Yeah.
see a lot of designers making hard choices of whether to maintain their own business or go back to work for somebody else. And once we talk through some of these ways that they can look at their business and see how knowing your numbers can really help every project and get you where you need to be. If you need to be at 20, 30, 40, some people are at 100% markups on every project. Great. But that can really change whether or not you're able to afford your life and work for yourself.
Right. I actually 100% agree with you about the getting comfortable with the numbers. I think that that's something that designers are struggle. Some design, and not all designers, obviously, but some designers struggle with that. I think that they think that getting comfortable with the numbers is not having to talk about them. You know what I mean? With the clients, like, oh, I'm comfortable with it because I didn't even think about it. And that's not necessarily comfortable with it. That's actually the avoidance of being comfortable with it. And so if you don't know what you're making and you don't know where that margin is, and you're, sending over invoices that are high and then they're not, and they're just getting paid, but you're not like acknowledging the money. It's like, I think there's almost an idea of like, we'll just slip the invoice and we're just gonna, and that fear of like what their reaction to the invoice is. It's almost like it's an avoiding of that conversation. And if you get really like truly comfortable with it, you're in a better place. And I will say this a lot depends on where you are in your life journey too, because I do know a lot of designers we just actually interviewed a designer who she does flat fee. She doesn't track her numbers to the degree that you're suggesting, but she has little kids and it works from out of her home, and she's very comfortable that she's making a decent profit based on her revenue, but she doesn't have the bandwidth to drill down what those numbers are. And I think sometimes, depending on where you are in your life journey, especially because we're 80% women and there's a lot of those women are moms, that's okay. You can forgive yourself of not knowing the details.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes. But if you do want the most profit out of the business, if you do want to start, and I'm not going to say get serious, because you're serious even if you're trying to put full time into being a great mother and full time into being, or father, and good full time into being, all the roles we have in life. It's not that you're not serious, but you're going to be setting yourself up for success in the long term by looking at these things, because they're so important to long-term success and being able to ride the waves of, a good economy, a bad economy, all of the things that go along with that.
Exactly. Well, and to your point, it's not just about, two things. One, I was the mom at home with the kids and I wasn't tracking, and that you do what works for you at whatever stage you're in. Yeah. Absolutely. So full forgiveness. You're
I just
busy.
Want people to forgive themselves.
Totally.
Forgive yourself if you're super not on top of it sometimes in your life, because.
And if you are at a point, like I was at a point where I just wanted to be making what I was making when I was working for somebody else, even though I was working more hours and it was for myself, I get that too. At some point with your business, when you have more time, you're going to want to not just be replacing your salary. You want to be making money so you can keep it in the business, to your point, to ride a wave of we don't know what's going to happen this year, that you still have money to pay your salary, and you still have money to keep the lights on, and you still have money if you have somebody that helps you out. So it's not just about your income. I would love for designers to think a little bit further where you're building a business that can pay you when maybe it's not a busy time. And that comes with being profitable. It's not just about the salary getting paid, or your car being paid, or your insurance being. You got to be billing in a way that you're making money for the business, and the business is also making a profit, not just you drawing your salary. Yeah. And that's where your business shifts. And then when we are talking about more turbulent times, you're covered.
Right. And it's such a big change when you finally have some more flexibility if you are in that situation when your kids are younger. And, I was there, and there were definitely times when the interior design community was rocking and rolling, and times when I was like, I'm not doing anything now because I'm too busy. So there's those kinds of things. But Niall is in the full weeds. He's got 4 little ones at home. So
yeah.
I remember those times so much that I'm like, it's way more important to be at the cross country meet and,
Totally.
being a cool parent that brings the oranges. I want to be that parent. So, and that my kid has the proper outfit for green day at school or some craziness that happens. I remember how many reports we had to do at the last minute. My kids were like, "Oh, there's a major report that's due tomorrow. Can you just run out and go get every supply, no demand?"
Yeah. I always say, how did we do? What was our grade? Yeah. How did we grade? How did we do? Well, and to your point, that's the beauty of owning your own business, to have that flexibility to be able to do all of those things, right? And then we all know we end up in our office later at night, but that's okay. I think that's part of it. And I know when my boys were young and I would say, okay, mommy has to make a call. I just need you to be quiet for 10 minutes. That was always the moment that they would fight. And then if I wasn't on the phone, they would be like angels. But I remember I was like, I got to make this really important call. That would be the moment that they
human being for 5 minutes.
Yeah, everyone can relate to that. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, you've done a really good job too with your branding. How are you teaching designers a little bit about that too? Because I like your brand. I think that you've done a very good job to me about identity and strong branding, and and presenting that out to the world as a luxury designer. It comes through, as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at your stuff, it comes through. How do you translate that to people that you're talking to?
Well, thank you for that, because it's something that we work on, but we never know actually how it's perceived. No one ever does feed that back. But no, it's not. I am not a marketing expert. I just know what I'm comfortable with, and I know how I like things to look and be. Now, we are just about to reuse somebody new to do all of that. So they haven't started yet. So thank you, because now I'm curious. I might come back and ask you in 6 months what you think.
You should, because I love marketing and branding. So definitely let me. They have a sneak
for me. It is just what I'm comfortable with, because if I'm uncomfortable with it, I won't put it out. I feel like it's got to be authentic. Has to feel like me, and it needs to resonate. Like, my ideal clients are actually very similar to who I am. And so I feel like if it doesn't feel authentic, then it's not for me. It needs to be something that when they meet me or my team for the first time, it needs to feel like I've known you forever, because it was real. I'm sure we've all experienced, you follow someone you love, then you go and get the product, or you go to the store and you're like, that was kind of underwhelming, or didn't have the same vibe. Mm-hmm. So I just want it to be authentic. And I live by that. Like, I'm a pretty straight shooter. What you see is what you get in every realm of my world, whether it's the design or the Profit Academy or the podcast, whatever it is. I'm pretty much the same. Maybe after a cocktail or two, I might get a little louder, but other than that, you're getting the same person. So thank you. But unfortunately, it has just been us doing it and hoping that it resonates with our client. But we're just about to hand it over to someone else to do. So I will come back to you and ask you what you think in a few months.
I would love to
get your feedback.
I really, that's my favorite part, honestly, is looking at the numbers and the data and seeing how websites perform and user generated content and all of those. I love all of it. So that's exciting. And speaking of that, you've been published nationally. How has media exposure helped your business? And do you think that's important for designers to invest in?
I think it's probably a goal that a lot of us my age had, because print was so paramount in the 90s and 2000s. But then it happened and it was crickets. Like, nothing. Actually, not one call, no one ever referenced it. So, and every year we are published in some magazines here in Toronto, and I forget, because I don't know, like, I still love it. I still get magazines at home. I still love my AD months. Like, I don't know, but I don't know if it's my age. So we've had it, we've been in it. I still think if it's a goal, do it, because why not? But I do not pay for it anymore. Like, how you would have to pay for a publisher who would maybe try and push her. I did that one time. Nothing came out of it. Well, I got published, but I didn't end up getting any work from it. So if it comes and they want it, we will give them the rights to do it and they can talk to our clients, but we do not push it. But I think if it's a
I
goal, why
agree with you.
not? Yeah, like if that's your
No, I mean,
goal, then great.
I agree that you just have to know what your expectations are for the goal. I mean, if you are expecting business is going to come be booming because you were featured in a major magazine, then probably unlikely. But being able to say you were published in the magazine sometimes does attract, using it for your own marketing purposes in your own website, sometimes that can be beneficial. I mean, sometimes that leads to credibility and trust a little bit with your audience, but ultimately, I'm not sure how much of that really translates to dollars. I do like local magazine versus like national. I think local is
Mhm.
actually a little bit better ROI than national, but national is like more recognizable, of course. So,
Yeah.
that like one is great for your trust factor and one is might be better for bringing clients in. Now, as a leader in the design world, how do you mentor and give back beyond the academy?
So we do sponsor quite a bit of events in our local area. To your point, we're not from a large. We're just north of Toronto, so we're in a smaller village, if you will, surrounding other villages. So we do sponsor quite a few events and golf clubs around town, and we do give back that way. In addition to any gifting that we do for any of our clients, we actually include 100% back to a camp here in North
Oh,
Muskokas that's for children with cancer. We always make sure that something is resonating with not only us but with our clients, and we stick to being true to ourselves. And we definitely try to help other designers. I'm at a talk in May. We're giving my time for 6 hours to Designer Day where they can come and talk and ask me any questions they want. And I just hope that some of this helps people benefit faster with their business, the next generation who are trying to
oh, I
make it
love
sooner
that.
and faster with entrepreneurship because it is a lonely road. It is lonely and it is long.
It
And I
is.
feel like if we can
It
help,
is.
even if I can help a few people not feel that that's that lonely, that they could ask a question. What I've realized in these years, I also belong to another entrepreneur organization, and you realize that it's not just us, that every entrepreneur is actually quite lonely. But I think because as designers, our industry has been, for so long, you stay in your corner and you stay in your corner, and I'm going to keep my secrets and we're not going to share. And I thought it
Yeah.
was just designers, but it's not. It's every entrepreneur feels that it's a lonely road with very few people who understand. And so the more people we can get into a room that are like-minded doing the same job, I think I learn something every time I talk to somebody too in the industry. So I think we could all
Right.
benefit from helping each other. So it's a talk. In addition to the talk, we can get together and meet. And I think there's always power in community, which is why I love what you're doing, because it's
Oh,
such
thank
a
you.
great way and like you said, 80% of us are women. We love to talk.
Yes,
How
some
this
of us.
industry was so like
Yes,
closed off. It was
yes,
crazy to me. Yeah. So
I know. And speaking to that, like I have also one of the reasons we actually even started the podcast was because so many designers were bringing up being burned out, and I think that that's increasing, not decreasing, unfortunately. Are you getting that too when in the academy are people coming to you and just unhappy with how they feel and not as connected to the creativity that they once loved about design? And how do you coach them through that process? I mean, the finance stuff is really, really, really important, and make sure you're making money, I think helps build confidence. But beyond that, how are you helping people through that avoiding burnout phase?
well, and if you're making money, it somehow helps it a little bit, right? If you're profitable, you
Yeah,
can see that it's working great.
it's a nice
Yeah.
But if
push.
there's burnout, we sometimes need to look at, if you're tracking your hours, let's see where you're losing. Like what's draining you? Where is there things that you can outsource? Like I know all of us entrepreneurs, we can do it all. Of course you can. You've built a business, you've gotten to like, I can be the accountant, I can be the CEO, I can be the CFO, I can be HR, I can be your client's
You see,
therapy. Like you can do it all. Of course you can. But at some point we can literally quantify our time, and you need to decide what elements are not serving you. So I know the first thing I gave up in my business was the accounting, which is really hard because I felt like I could do it, but the projects were getting bigger and I didn't want to make a mistake. And it would be a costly mistake if I did it. So I knew that I was spending every Friday which is 8 hours on accounting. That's time I could have been actually making money. So that was the first thing that I handed
Right.
off. So is there anything in your business that, yes, you can do it and don't feel like you're giving up control, but that you can outsource to gain your time back? Would that
Right.
be renderings? Would that maybe be your AutoCAD drawings? Could that be a VA who might be able to do some of your packages for your presentation or putting together contracts for you? Is there anything that you don't love doing? Yes, you're capable of doing it. It might be easy, but it takes that time off your plate and you're buying back your time. Because if you're billing a client, let's just go low and say $100 an hour, but a VA is $25 to $30 an hour, you're still profiting. So now you're able to go back,
Right.
make money while someone else is taking that off your plate, or you're just buying back your time that you can go cut the oranges for your kid's soccer game, whatever the case may be.
Right.
But I would try to
Right.
start seeing where you can outsource some of the easier tasks off your desk. Because I was shocked when we really got down and did hours at a point where it was every minute was being like, I had one of the girls here at the office was even telling me when she was going to the bathroom, like, you don't need to tell me the 5 minutes you were in the loo. Like we can we can give a buffer there. But I was shocked when I realized I was only allotting, let's say, 5 hours to put our presentation packages together. They were taking almost 10.
Right.
So these are the things where you can start to see that 10 hours of time, we need to reassess. Why is it taking 10 hours? Or can this be sent to somebody whose billable time is less? And those are the things that you can start using your data for as well. If you're able to track and you're willing to do it, these are the things that it'll really give you these shining moments where you're like, I didn't realize that was taking that much time, and maybe you weren't allotting for it in the project and you weren't billing enough for it. So there's two parts of that, but you might be able to buy back your time with some assistance or help. And
Yeah,
you got
I agree with that. And it's hard to do that though. I mean, I think that in the beginning when you just said like it's hard to give that, feels very intimate, I think, to give people access and designers for that. I don't think I've met a more, I want to say this in a nice way, because I do mean it in a nice way, but particular group that really likes things a certain way. So it's very hard, for instance,
control.
Even having a VA
it's control.
doing emails for you. It's that control issue where it has to look a certain way. It has to sound a certain way. It has to, represent you a certain way. And so if along that process, if you're giving, people access to maybe your email list, or maybe in your emails, they're digging through and finding the invoices and going through and looking at what is your personal expense versus your business expense, because you're not super great at those things. It just feels like intrusive, and it's hard. I think it's really hard for designers to get in
it's
and
still
delegate,
hard,
because
you have to start being okay with it's like, I was just saying this, it's a terrible analogy, so bear with me, but running a business and running a life and kids, I had to get someone in to clean my home. And I always say, of course I can clean my home better, but I don't have time to do it. So, but once you give it up, you're like, oh, that doesn't suck. That's pretty good that someone else is doing. So you have to take the things that you do at home and transfer it to your business. So am I okay with maybe the person who now does the presentation of her way of doing the template is a little different than mine? Is it going to make a difference to the client? And these small things. But again, if you have templates and processes built into your business, it's very easy to have someone come in and to start doing things the way you've done it. If you do things different every single time, this is going to be hard for someone to come in. But if you came in and saw our presentation packages, every single one looks the same. There is a template to way it's done. It's very easy to plug the things in. And every single time, I know that my clients are getting something that's approved by me and I don't have to worry. So I think processes in there, which I know we didn't touch on, which is a whole other subject in itself. But once you have your business and processes going or templates, I think it becomes very easy to allow somebody into your life. It's just having to be willing to do it because there's some time invested right at the beginning. Of course, it's not an easy breezy thing. You're going to give up more time to teach the person, to your point, to use your verbiage, to speak the way, to represent you the way you want to be represented. And there's a little effort made at the beginning, but I think what you get back out of it can be very valid in helping you with your time. And you might not even want to free up you might want to free up time just for your own personal well-being, taking the walk in the morning, doing those things. But I think if you have a list of what's important to you, which is again hard for a lot of us entrepreneurs to do. The first thing we do is think about work, check your phone about work. We don't think about ourselves a lot. But I think sometimes it's nice if you have a list and your goal is to do 3 walks this week. And by sending out your renderings, it allows you to do that. You might find that peace of mind for you is made it that you're more productive the rest of the week. So it's setting
Yeah,
those goals for
absolutely.
yourself and everybody's different. And it's just figuring out what that goal is.
Absolutely. I love that because I think that if you can get comfortable with it, that's fantastic to free up that time, like you said, to be more productive or to give it back to yourself because we all need that sometimes. We all need that sometimes. Final question for you. What's next? What are you up to next? You have a lot on your plate. Is there anything that's coming up?
It should be sleep, lots and lots of sleep, but it's not. I just got back from vacation. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't know what happens on vacation. You're supposed to be like zoned out and like looking at all this beautiful stuff in Europe. And I'm like, you know what I would love to do? So of course I don't shut off my brain. I would actually like to, in the next year, my goal is to maybe start having some in-person training here at my studio if people want to come in and meet and do exactly this, connect in a different way, right? Like you get to meet people and have organic conversation as opposed to here is the curriculum. Here is what I would love to get people into my space. Yes, we can talk about your profitability. Yes, I'd love to help you, but there's got to be other things that are top of mind that you might have questions about.
Yeah.
And I think it would be great to have people come into my studio and hang out with me for a day. And we can talk about all the things. Yeah. As opposed to just watching a TV screen or watching a computer.
I know. I'm on the same page as you because it's not the this year plan. This year was I wanted to get involved with the conference. And so I'm getting involved with Design Edge and helping an interior design conference be in fruition. But next year, I definitely want to start looking at retreats because I think sometimes need I want to capture the fun stuff about High Point, or, those kinds of things where we have those moments where you just sit down with other professionals in the industry and can really talk about what's working, what isn't working, but just also some social time and some downtime and some bonding time, like camp.
Yeah.
Adult camp for designers.
I love that.
Have a massage, good food and good conversation with people who are like-minded and really having real conversation, having the time to do it.
There's a real power that happens in those events. It's really something, like I said, I belong to this it's EO organization. It's entrepreneurs, it's everybody. It's not just designers. But when we go to these events, as much as you're like, oh my God, how did this come up so fast? I don't have time on Friday. Then you get there. It is so motivating and invigorating. And you leave with a whole new sense of resilience and urgent, like you just can't wait to get back into your business. That I love that that's what because imagine if it's a room full of people who are literally doing the same business you're doing, how powerful that could be is mind blowing. Sorry, I get really excited because I would go to that. Yeah. I would go to that because I love that is something that you're in a room of people who are with the same struggles in the same business. And if they can help you, you can help them. You just share your experiences. That is powerful.
Yeah. I've been saving for the past couple of years Airbnbs that will fit like 12 people or 16 people and, in different parts of the country or the world, really. And I was like, this would be fantastic. This one is a castle.
Look at Niall. And he's like, oh, that's a lot of sharing.
That's a lot of people.
That is. Niall would be like, I only want to see like 3 of them.
I'm like, okay.
I'll be like, Niall, come on.
I don't even want to share an Airbnb with 16 of my family members. I'm like,
well, we would have a chef and masseuse, Niall, on the grounds to take care of you.
Wow.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. I can't wait to have you again. And I can't wait to see you at the possibly next show that we go to after High Point. So wonderful. And we'll make sure that everyone gets your details and can follow you and then follow along and possibly maybe sign up and get your business in order. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.